So here we are again, ready for another session of watercolor painting, and this time I shall show you how I paint breaking waves using art masking fluid. If you don't know how to use art masking fluid, then I recommend that you have a look at my other video, which is called Painting Stones with the Use of Art Masking Fluid. But this video will show you how you can paint stones and breaking waves with foam and spray and perhaps a couple of seagulls. So let's have a look. You have to imagine here that I've got 4 stones standing on the edge of water by the sea, and the waves are coming in from the other side of the stones and they crash into the stones and send a lot of foam and spray into the air. This is a picture which is quite easy to paint with art masking fluid, and we can also get some structure onto our stones using the art masking fluid. I have now drawn the stones here in pencil on my paper, and the next thing will be to get some art masking fluid onto the paper as well. I never use a brush when I put art masking fluid onto one of my pictures. I'm afraid that the art masking fluid will stick the hairs together if I'm not careful enough to wash it out in time. So I use other techniques. One technique which I use here is to use paper tissue or a kitchen roll, which I use here. That will be to get the foam and the waves. I'll be using this. To get the spray, I can use my old toothbrush, and I want to have some birds in the air. For that I will use the back end of this rigger brush. So to start, I have to get some waves and some foam. I make a little ball out of my paper here, tissue paper. I make sure that I have a lot of edges here, and I put this into my art masking fluid, dip it into that, and with that I go over to my paper. I decide how high the waves will go. And I put it on I also put it over the stones here. Some of it onto the stones, some of it behind the stones to look as if it's a foaming behind the stones here. If I want to have a little bit of spray on my picture, there is enough spray here, I think, but just to show you how I would do it with a toothbrush, I'll dampen the toothbrush here. I dip it into the art masking fluid, then I use some sort of stick or the back end of a brush. It is important that when you're using a toothbrush to spray paint or art masking fluid, that you drag the handle of the brush up towards yourself through the hairs, because it is when the hairs spring back that they throw the paint onto the paper. If you try and do it the other way around, trying to force the paint from the toothbrush, then you get the spray into your face. And if I want some birds, I use the back end of my little brush here. I just do a couple of something which looks like birds. Now these birds got surprised by the by the waves here, so they are just about to fly off. So that is going to be my picture here. I now have to let this dry. While I'm waiting for the art masking fluid to dry here, then I can tell you a little bit about my ebook. If you like the way that I teach, the way that I present things, perhaps you'd be interested in my ebook. But first I would like to thank the people that have already bought the ebook. It's always encouraging to find out that some people out there are interested, and it encourages me to make more of these demonstration films for you. The ebook, which is called Watercolour, a book of watercolour techniques, is available online. You can go to my web page, the address will come here in a minute, and you can see what the different chapters contain. It's a book designed mostly for people who are starting with watercolour, people who want to learn the different techniques. It's a book full of tips and tricks and things like that, designed for people who want to start with watercolour and enjoy it. So you can go to my website and you can have a look at the contents of the different chapters, and if you decide to buy it, then you can. It costs $15 US, and one pays by PayPal. Now back to the painting. The art masking fluid dries quite quickly alone without any hairdryer, but just to make sure it is dry, I use the hairdryer. Another little thing, when it is dry, it still looks as if it's wet because it's shiny, but you can test it with your finger. If it doesn't stick to the finger, then it is dry enough to paint. The first thing I'll do, will paint a little bit of sky. It is important here that you do not use a weak blue colour for the sky. The colour has to be quite strong, otherwise the spray and the foam from the waves will not show up. So here I'm using quite a strong ultramarine blue colour. Then I'm going to say that my sky is here. Nothing very complicated. A blue area going down to the horizon. From the horizon down here I'm going to have the sea. Here I'm going to have a little bit of Payne's grey colour, and I'm going to paint that in stripes. So the white stripes in between the Payne's grey colour is going to be foam on the waves. Okay, something like that. Need some more over here. Even though you know you've got art masking fluid on the paper, you still have to paint over it. And right at the bottom, I'm going to have a beach. I'm going to use a little bit of, start with yellow ochre and give it a little bit of brown burnt sienna. And the burnt sienna I can add to my ultramarine blue and get some even darker colours here. Again, just in stripes. This is sort of a bit wet and too wet. You can see I haven't dried nothing in between. I just have this colour here. When this area here is dry, then I start painting my stones. I just take up a little bit of the wet colour with a tissue here. It'll dry quicker that way. The next thing to do is to paint the stones. I paint one stone at a time in different colours. This first one with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. I paint the stone all the way out to the edge, and you can see here that how the art masking fluid stops the paint from getting to the paper. But that's okay, I mean that's what it's supposed to do, so that's fine. The second stone could be a little bit more bluish, so I just add a little bit of ultramarine blue to the colour I used on the other stone. So I get a bluish, more bluish stone here. And here you can see how the art masking fluid rejects the colour again. If you feel like you have to put more colour on the stones, you can do it now. Okay. And then this has got to dry again. And now you can remove the art masking fluid and see what we have left. What we do now is to use a damp brush to dissolve the colour, that is the paint which is already on the stones, and we'll see what happens here. So there's some colour here. We go around dissolving it here. If you want the stone to disappear into the foam, then we have to have a soft edge here. The line that you can see, the pencil line, that can be washed out, or rather you can use a rubber to remove it afterwards. The next stone, it starts here. And I get that sort of pattern onto it. So I have a stone here. Not too much water on the brush, otherwise you're going to be dissolving all the colour here. Here I can leave the area at the top of this stone as a soft edge, and I can get the foam to show itself. And the same with this little stone here. So this will dry now. I could use a hairdryer again. And with a rubber I can try and rub out the line here so one can't see where the stone was. And the same perhaps here at the top. I can now mix up a little bit darker paint ultramarine blue and burnt sienna again. And with this color I can see now, if I decide that the light is coming from this side, so this part of the stone and this part of the stone and this part of the stone will be darker. Quickly I use my brush to dissolve this color on the stone. And the same here. Here I have some birds. I take a diluted Payne's grey. I paint the underside of one of the wings on each bird. Then I take a much stronger Payne's grey colour and I paint the wingtips. Again, nothing too precise, and perhaps I give them a little head. And a beak. So there are my 4 birds flying through the spray. Could I get a little bit more colour onto my water, onto the sea? Well, I'll try. I take from my palette Payne's grey colour and just put a little bit of it onto this area here, which could be the sea. And you can see it looks like waves coming in, and the same on this side. Well, there is one thing more which I think I could show you on this picture here, and that is a little bit of shadow or tone on the foam, on the waves. There will always be a little bit of that around the stones there on the foam. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, these areas here, they could have a little bit of shadow. Okay, the light is coming from the right side here, so that will be quite white, but around the stones here there could be a bit of shadow. So here I can, I think I should start with a little bit of ultramarine blue. Shadows are quite bluish quite often. So I think I'll just try a little bit of this colour here. I paint it onto dry paper, but then I wash my brush out and dissolve it around here. And I can do a little bit more here. Just a few dabs of blue colour. Wash the brush out. A little bit of that. And the same over here. Wash the brush out and just dissolve a little bit of the colour around here. If you've painted too much colour on the paper, then you can always use a dry piece of paper to mop it up with. Remember, a piece of paper like this is the watercolour painter's rubber, so you can always use it to remove some of the wet paint. So this is it, breaking waves breaking over 4 stones standing on a seashore. Well, it's fun to try something like that. You can't learn anything by watching people doing it. You have to do it yourself. So the only way to do it is to get a piece of paper and try it for yourself. Okay? Have fun, and bye until next time.